Hi, Slim. Good to see you again.
Hey man, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's pretty good weather up here. Sun is shining. The cows are fat and happy. Still about 3 weeks away from having any calves. So
Are you
yeah, yeah.
kind of looking forward to that? Pretty exciting time.
Yes, actually, I really am because this is the first time that I've had the cows and I did all the breeding to all the cows that I have. Like
Oh,
last year,
really?
I bought some cows that were already bred. So this is the first calf crop that's 100% I bred them.
Congratulations. Tell me more about the breeding. I've been looking a lot into that. I was actually watching the Angus documentary this morning from the very beginning from oh gosh, what was his name? Andrew Grant, I believe, from Scotland, brought over four Angus to Kansas.
Okay. Um, I am breeding in Angus, but my cows are Corriente cows, and
Okay.
I really like the Corriente breed because they're descended from the Creole cattle that the Spanish brought over in the 1500s,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of went feral in the desert Southwest and in northern Mexico for 400 years. So they've got 400 years of Mother Nature driving their genetic selection and adaptation.
Wow.
And granted, we're in the modern era, the last 60, 70, 80 years, where we've had access to balers. We can move forage around and high energy feed crops like corn, soybeans. I think that's really messed up some genetics, and,
Mm-hmm.
and we can get into that later. But I feel the Corriente breed represents the greatest untapped reserve of forage efficient genetics. So I'm trying to take that, select for fertility, and add a little bit of frame and add a little bit of muscle.
That's awesome. I want to hear, I'm definitely going to hear a lot more, as we move forward with our, communication and, relationship and stuff like that. I don't think that a lot of the general public even understands the dynamics of what goes into the thought of, breeding our cattle for us. So um, that's why I'm diving in deep. So it's going to be a fun journey.
And we covered this with Steve Stratford a couple weeks ago. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the genetics have been shifting one direction for a long time because that's what we've been told as producers that we need to have. Well, we've gone too far. Like we've
Right.
just completely over rotated on a lot of the carcass size and it's biting guys in the butt. And carcass size has to come back down to get some profitability back to the farm and ranch gate in the
Mm-hmm.
commodity sector. But that's what we're not here today to talk about. We're not talking about playing the existing game
No.
under somebody else's rules. We're talking about completely changing the game and putting the producer back in the driver's seat, right?
100%. I mean, that's the only way we can look at it moving forward. Very little compromises and on the back end. You've really got to look at the industry as a whole, understand it, not judge it, but it has to be forward thinking from here on out. We can't look over our shoulders as much as everybody's been so dependent upon, because it's getting us in a very difficult situation these days.
And as producers, we can't just continue to take these things that we're told at face value. We have to start really looking at, well, who's paying them to say this or who funded
Right.
this research? So let's talk about Beef Initiative.
Sure.
What is the Beef Initiative?
Beef Initiative is many things right now. Right now, it's what it is, because you and I are talking. It's a form of awareness. It's like, hey, we're beginning a conversation here that a lot of people haven't been having, and if they have, it's been kind of compartmentalized. It's been probably in a bubble of sorts between certain parts of the industry. The way I look at it is the Beef Initiative is basically a new decentralized way of thinking about farming and ranching in our nation. And it comes with a lot of food intelligence that, I've been able to put together a team that I've worked with kind of behind the scenes of saying, hey, how are we going to approach this as far as getting people back to looking at their rancher, for local rancher, of course, as a form of pure animal protein, in a form of nutrition that we have lost. So by saying that, it's a big umbrella of a lot of things. But right now, I want to, this next year, it's going to be a lot of education about, where we came from, and then a lot of innovation moving forward. These are new tools that we're going to present to the industry. These are the people that we're going to be talking with. These are the relationships that we're going to build. This is the type of information we want from the rancher so they can bring the input into us and we can give it out to the world because everybody's starting to pay attention.
And I think as much as we can talk about the evils of social media and different platforms,
Right.
they're doing a lot of good by helping spread this awareness. They're giving us producers a platform to share our stories instead of just the story that, for lack of a better term, let's just say big ag and big pharma want to be told.
Right.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
where are you from?
I'm from the Texas Panhandle. My whole family is from Texas. We're about seventh generational Texan, but the Texas Panhandle, I think we got there in the late 1800s. In a
Or the
little,
Panhandle?
what's that?
What part of the
What
Panhandle?
my family originated out of a place called Lockney, Texas. And it's up there it's on the Llano Estacado. It's out in the middle of the desert Great Plains, but I grew up in Canyon, Texas, outside of Amarillo. So that's, Amarillo was Charles Goodnight trading post. So there's a lot of cattle history here. It's in the blood of a lot of people. The agriculture and ranching is the whole area. This is how it was formed.
Okay. So you're obviously a gentleman of a few more years than I am.
Sure.
So tell me some of your story. How did you get to care about food so much?
That's a long story just because I was raised. My grandfather, I mean, he survived the Great Depression. He survived a couple world wars. He just survived the Dust Bowl. He thrived as a farmer. He made it work in a different system than we had now. So as far as the family and the heritage, it's just in our blood. We come from agriculture. I, growing up, was around it. I was able to perform some ranching, horses. I mean, I just had that cowboy life as it is in West Texas. I had access to a lot of different types of lifestyles, from harvesting to, calving, to learning horses, to roping. But I wasn't, a master of any of them. I was just around it. It was just a lifestyle. You had your rodeos, you had the tri-state fair, you had the farm and ranch rodeo, you had all kinds of stuff that was just available. So I knew kind of how the food apparatus worked. When I was young, I went to Austin, Texas, and I fell into technology. It was something that I was very good at. I was self-taught. And so I learned a form of project management, research, analysis. I landed in some good startup companies, and it gave me a really cool tool set. And that's how I spent most of my adult life. It afforded me a lot of travel. I've been around the world a couple of times. I've seen a lot of cultures, a lot of foods, a lot of industries in different forms that a lot of people don't ever get to see. As I got into the age, I'm a Generation Xer, as I've started looking at things and how it was when I grew up and to where we are now, I could tell that there was a problem with the food industry. And I've known about it for a while. But when COVID hit, I said, okay, I'm going to use all this skill set. I'm going to lean back on my heritage of my grandfather and where I was raised, especially in the state of Texas. And I was going to look at the food, and I was going to find a way to start communicating the issues that are at hand. I have a lot of people that I know that are in the medical industry. I have a lot of people I know that in the farming and ranching industry. I have a lot of people in the technology industry. I started studying Bitcoin. I started wanting to know more about decentralization. We all get into Bitcoin at certain points in time in our lives, but what people don't understand is the aspect of the decentralized thinking of Bitcoin. It affords people a new perspective and a new reflection to where you can actually kind of look at the truth a little bit easier. And it's a study. You have to, it's a time preference thing. It's a low time preference thing. So it started all coming together with food intelligence, solutions that we need to innovate into. And, here we are.
So Bitcoin is one of the things that we talk about a lot.
Sure.
The argument I get is what happens if the internet goes down? What happens if technology fails? What happens to what happens to those little
okay, I'm
people?
going to put this real quick. Okay, I'm going to say this real quick. People that usually ask that question do not understand technology to the level that they need to. And also, and this is not judgment, and this, I'm not being a sarcastic smartass either, but this is something that if we don't have the internet, we don't have society. Bottom line. So you
I would
can
agree.
you can forget about that. Okay. You don't have supply chain lines. You don't have fuel. You don't have electricity. You don't have anything. Let's get back to caveman days. Okay. So who cares? Let's barter some shells if we have to. But as far
It's here
as
to stay, and if it quits working, we're going to have bigger problems.
you better know how to raise some livestock like you do. And that's going to be what you focus on. That will be your time preference that you focus on surviving. And a lot of people don't understand the internet was built to survive nuclear holocaust. So if you're going to talk this game and saying, well, if the internet goes down, the Bitcoin doesn't work, it's not a good argument. And so, that having that perspective, I can understand why people say that. It's totally logical to say that. But I want people to understand if the internet goes down, Bitcoin or cash or anything else is not going to save you.
It's having nails and bullets and beans and seeds.
It's the
At
source
that
of the
point,
seed. Yeah, it really is. It's like, how do we survive? Do you have a space? Do you have, a good neighbor? Do you have good localization? Do you have a good community? Do you know how to grow your own food? Do you know how to raise your own food? Do you know how to process your own food? It comes down to the basics of that. And it's how our ancestors did it. It's how our grandparents and great grandparents did it to a certain form. It was a decentralized way of living. And if you know that about your heritage, and you know that about money and how money has so been centralized and it is a control apparatus from the federal reserve to the central banks and everything, you start seeing that Bitcoin is an option for you to be able to leverage, especially within your food supply, and if you're a producer or a supplier.
can you explain that a little more on why it's a good leverage over a fiat currency?
Well, a fiat currency has no scarcity. And so, they just printed $8 trillion in the last couple of years.
Yeah, like 40% of all the money that's ever been printed has been printed in the last 3 years, or some crazy.
Sure. Yeah. And so that, look, we're in hyperinflation right now. The government won't even admit, what inflation is. They say CPI. They don't even bring food into the CPI. That's a clown show. I'm sorry. Inflation is out of control right now, and people are suffering, and this is going to get worse. It's only started. So, as far as looking at that, you need a store of value that you can put your asset value into. Okay. Where are you going to put it right now? Where is the value of your cow right now? Is it in a
Calves that they're
US?
carrying,
What's that?
the calves that they're carrying, that's where the value of them is.
For you right now, it is, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's ranchers out there that'll say, well, my value is in the USDA insurance policy. Okay, that's where the value is, because they have to have that USDA insurance policy to survive every year. It's not a judgment. It's just the truth. It's happening. Or some people say, well, my value is in the grain that I had that cow recycles from Monsanto and Bayer, Cargill. So that's where the value is. It's in the price and the profit of that grain. Well, it used to be in the land, and for a long time, it was in the cow itself. Well, a lot of times, whenever you're pursuing a store of value that has basically no scarcity, it can change with futures, with commodities, with energy prices, with grain prices, with water prices. Then you don't have a stable store of value that you can rely on to help you get through a season, the next season, to increase the value of your cow or your calf that is in that mother heifer. Okay, so you think about that. When Bitcoin has gone up over 100% for 12 years straight, it's never gone down. And everybody goes, well, it's volatile. Well, it's gone up 100% every year that it's ever been in existence. Whenever you have something that has gone up 100, you can't name anything close in the history of man that has ever gone up that drastically and had that stability. People say it's volatile. No, it's not volatile. Even if it is volatile, everything is volatile. And whenever you're in a first mover adoption period of new innovation of technology or money, monetary systems, anything's going to be volatile. You have to have adoption periods. You have to have understanding. You have to have education. You have to have on ramps. You have to decrease friction to be able to get into that asset. When we get gold, what do we have to do? We have to dig into the ground. We have to mine that gold. That takes proof of work. That takes moving earth to get there. The concept of Bitcoin is the same way. We just use technology to mine that Bitcoin. Once a Bitcoin has been established, there will only be 21 million Bitcoin ever mined. There are over 200, I don't know how many millionaires across the world. There's only going to be 21 million Bitcoin ever mined, and that will never change. You cannot ever change that fact because it is based on a decentralized protocol that has no center point. It flows like water down a mountain. You can't control it. It's going to flow through the internet, through the satellites, through all the wires. So if you have a protocol that can store monetary value in it, it is basically the new network that will move forward in our lifetimes. And whenever the internet was created, it didn't have monetary value. We had to build layers upon layers upon layers of banking, transactional services, being able to shop online, software, e-commerce. Everybody just thinks that, oh, you could always use Amazon. I remember when Amazon came out, it took years to be able to have people to have confidence to shop online. Now it's second place. Same with Bitcoin. It's just new technology. People don't understand it. I went through the first phases of the dot-com boom and bust in online software. People didn't understand what we were innovating now, but it set the standard and it pioneered into where we are today. So it's a form of store of value where you can actually have a certain dollar amount of Bitcoin. Okay. Well, if you know how to manipulate, basically, maybe how to take ownership of your Bitcoin, you can use that as a store of value. You can leverage off of that store of value into something that you've never had access to. You can become your own bank and nobody can do anything about that. Bitcoin is property. That's how the SEC, everybody looks at it. People don't understand that. It's like buying land in the new internet.
Okay.
So if you own 2 blocks, let's say this, Michael Saylor said this once, if you would have purchased 2 blocks of land on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan before Manhattan was Manhattan, you would have never sold that 2 blocks of land when they started building on it. You would have had property on some of the most expensive real estate in the world. If you own that 2 blocks of land, you've never sold that land. You've built on top of that land. You've built businesses, you've built properties, and it keeps on stacking up and up and up. That granite that is Manhattan, that is that 2 blocks in Manhattan, is the same thing as what Bitcoin is in the new networking apparatus that the world is moving into. So whenever you can own 2 blocks of land in Manhattan, you're going to have some leverage and you're going to have banking access that you've never had before. This is coming, and it's no different from how people use gold, and it's how people used land in the United States, especially in the state of Texas, because most of Texas is private property. So you bought up land a long time ago in Texas, you leverage that land for your value. You leverage that land to acquire more cows. Right. You leverage that land to buy equipment. You leverage that land to grow crops. You did a lot of things with that land. Well, that was the store of value. Well, that store of value is not in the land anymore because the land is valued in fiat currencies, which is just out of control. You have a ranch in the Texas Panhandle up here that's worth $200 million. Well, that's all they're going to value that land for, and that heritage of that ranch. That is almost criminal for what, it should be. And I think people are going to see within land ownership and with ranching, with farming, they're going to start using the Bitcoin protocol to store that value again. It's going to give them a path into some leverage that, like I said, they've never seen. It's going to help them kind of create a legacy or maintain the legacy that got them there.
Okay. Um, so these proof of work blockchains, they've been under fire over the last year, 18 months during times of COVID for energy use, like big data centers that, you know, I guess for lack of a better term, do the cryptography hashing to mine the blocks. A lot of times that requires a lot of electricity. And I understand that that's, different blockchains and different cryptocurrencies have different energy requirements. So what would you have to say to somebody that's concerned about, let's just pull one out of the hat, burning fossil fuels to make electricity to mine Bitcoin?
I hear a lot of that stuff. There's only one blockchain, and it's Bitcoin. Everything else is cryptocurrencies or nothing more but copies of Bitcoin protocol that are centralized apparatuses that do not flow through a decentralized network. That's where people get very confused. So we'll talk about Bitcoin and Bitcoin only as far as not understanding the energy usage. That'll probably be more responsible to it.
Okay.
What it is, as far as the energy usage, sure. I mean, there is energy uses to power the miners in Bitcoin. Okay. Well, people put it out of perspective because they watch CNBC and they watch these news channels that really don't do much except manipulate and propagandize. A lot of the Bitcoin mining that's being done these days is being done across the world. And a lot of that energy that's being used is renewable energy, solar energy, hydroelectric energy, energy that's basically going to get wasted if it doesn't get used. And so we're not burning tons and tons of fossil fuels to mine Bitcoin. See, that's number one. There's where the conversation should start, is like, let's talk about how much energy usage it's actually using, that it's being stolen from any other form of cities or areas, nation states, or anything like that. That is just a false that's a false reality in a lot of people's mindsets. If you're using this energy, what you're doing is you're creating monetary value as you're mining that Bitcoin, a monetary value that goes up in time. So that energy, that electricity, is transferring itself into monetary value. Whenever we use fossil fuels now, when we go dig for gold, think about the fossil fuels that are digging for gold. Nobody puts a number on that now, do they? And so you look at certain industries that are out there, the ones pointing fingers at Bitcoin miner. Well, they're the ones that have gotten us this position within fossil fuels.
Half
So
of them probably drive electric cars anyway.
right. And electric cars is just, it's yeah, they'll be there and it's great. Good luck. It's not sustainable in the long period of time. But let's go back to fossil fuels. The thing people understand is, as Bitcoin evolves, people are, let's say El Salvador, they're using volcanic steam to mine Bitcoin. They're taking something from the earth and they're turning it into monetary value. That monetary value is going to a base layer of value for that nation. Okay, that's a very good use of energy. It's a very good use of electricity. You're not going to see anybody in the middle of, certain places in a large percentage of mining be in the middle of freaking New York mining Bitcoin. They're going to be in rural places where you don't have to bother the environment. All you're doing is using basically what the earth is giving us. You're not causing a bunch of pollution. And what you're doing is you're turning that energy into monetary value. That's a good kind of introduction of understanding of it. And as mining moves forward in the kind of the mindsets of people, I'll give you an example. There's some Tennessee ranchers that got natural gas mines. Okay. The blow off mines. What are they doing with that gas that was just being wasted? That was just going into the atmosphere? They're turning it into electricity. They're mining and they're turning that mining into monetary value, which is letting them leverage that mining into more value into their cows. So what are they doing? They're transferring energy. And that's what we do with our cows. That's all cows are. They're energy. their energy, their land tools. And what they do is they rebuild our soil in ways that people don't understand and is being assassinated out there in the general public and the global media marketing campaigns that are going against me. So once people start understanding energy transfer, how we create energy, and where, carbon and all this, the argument against carbon, and, that where climate change and what's causing the climate change, there's so many lies out there, and people are going to realize that the energy that we really need are those land tools rebuilding our soil.
I would agree 100% that
Uh-huh.
we need to get more cattle back out on
Yeah,
on the land full time,
you
and
bet.
maybe reevaluate some of these high energy farming practices that we've evolved and use.
Sure.
You know, I'm not terribly familiar with the Texas Panhandle. Never really
Right.
traveled through it very much.
Yeah,
Um,
most people just travel through it. It's flat lands, it's the Great Plains.
I went through about a week ago down Highway 54 through, just cut through the northwest corner of the Panhandle through Dumas and Dalhart.
Uh-huh. Sure.
It's kind of a depressing part of the world.
Yeah, it's the Great Plains. It's like, Llano Estacado, the last place that the Comanches were, it was the land of the Comanches. We have Palo Duro up here. And it's the second largest canyon in the United States. That's where the Comanches like to hide out. It's a very rugged part of the world. Like I say, it's on top of the Llano Estacado. You can go 200 miles and be parched, and it is, you got to have a level of toughness to make it up, in the Texas Panhandle.
Well, I think
So,
white men would go 200 miles and be parched. The natives
right.
would have a trouble,
No,
wouldn't have any
well,
trouble.
no, the Comanches kind of knew what they were doing. They had that mastered.
Have you ever read the book Empire of the Summer Moon?
No, but I remember the title, but I can't, it's been a couple of years since I've heard it, but you can
It,
familiarize.
it's a fan. It's an amazing book, and it talks about the Comanches. It starts about, some of the history of the Comanches, and I think 5, 6, or 7 different like bands that made up the tribe and where they came from. And like you said, Llano Estacado, that was one of their last strongholds. But
Hmm.
the book also kind of takes you through. Uh, I guess it goes through the story of Quanah Parker,
Yeah.
one of the last great Comanche warlords, and like how he came to be, because he was actually the son of a white woman.
Cynthia Parker.
Yeah, I couldn't remember the name. Thank you. And
She was kidnapped when she was like 8 years old by the
right,
Comanches. Yeah.
and she stayed with him so long that she forgot her English. And when she was, quote, rescued by the white people, she just wanted to go back to her family, which, I suppose is totally understandable. But I think it's worth noting that, the Comanches were noted for their ability to cover ground on a horse. The cavalry troopers at the time, 1830s, 40s, 50s, they were lucky if they could make 25 miles a day with their ponies, because all the supplies they needed. And the Comanches would ride 200 miles in a night, do a raid, and
Mhm.
then ride 200 miles back home.
Exactly. What a lot of people don't understand is, when Texas was forming, and it was, a lot of Comanche wars that took place for years. But the Texas Rangers found out exactly what you said, because everybody were soldiers and they had equipment and everything. Texas Rangers found out, it says the only way we're going to defeat the Comanche is learning how to fight like the Comanche. And what that was true horsemanship, and how to fight from your horse instead of getting off your horse and taking position and everything. They were very versatile. So the Comanches could actually shoot like 10 arrows within like 10 seconds, and they were masters at that. Well, the Texas Rangers, guess what, came along the Colt 5 shooter. So all of a sudden the Texas Rangers had 10 bullets, and so let the games begin. And then it became the 6 shooter, of course, and the Colt pretty much saved Texas back then from battling the Comanches, because there were, no matter what anybody says about anything, the Comanches were true warriors, they were fighters, and they were savage. They did a lot of things in the state of Texas, that happened. Cynthia Parker, they always say that she was kidnapped twice. once by the Comanches, and then once back by the Texas Rangers. You're correct on that. Quanah Parker was a very intelligent man. He basically bridged the gap of, what happened during the 1870s, and he was the peace between the white man and the Comanche. He saved that tribe and its history. So his hometown, or where they like to call it, is Quanah. It's up here in the Texas Panhandle. He has a museum and everything.
I'm not for sure because, nobody really knows where a lot of these tribes were, even back in the 1830s, 40s, and 50s. All the research that I've done, I'm kind of about the northeast part of the range that the Comanches ever raided into.
Uh-huh.
And mostly up here, we had more of a tribe called the Kiowas.
Sure.
And the Kiowas and Comanches actually share a reservation down
Yes.
in southwest Oklahoma.
They fought a lot together. They definitely did. They were partners whenever they had to be partners.
I wonder, wars happen because of lack of communication.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much all conflict happens because two parties just haven't been able to communicate their mutual desires to each other. You got to wonder, you know, what the native civilization would look like if we would have just stopped at the 100th meridian and said, hey, yeah, we screwed up. You guys can just take the rest of this and live, and let us have California and Oregon because we've already got a bunch of people there, but y'all can just have the rest of the middle. Can't help but wonder what that would have looked like, but I have no idea where to even start.
Well, I mean, if you'd have had that type of system that would have actually let a nation be sovereign, then, that would be something that, if allowed to be, the Native Americans would have been just fine. We would have never destroyed this land as we've have. And, that's just the truth. I mean, we know that.
We
We have
wouldn't
to
have hunted the
reflect.
buffalo to extinction, which, I mean,
Exactly.
we couldn't beat the Comanches. We couldn't beat the
No.
Comanches, the Kiowas, the 7 tribes that were still left out here. We couldn't beat them, even
Mm-mm.
with superior weaponry. Even after the Civil War and all the military innovations that came along with that, we still couldn't beat them.
No. We had to starve them out in a lot of ways. We had to take away their food supply.
And
Isn't that what happens to nations? Is that whenever they're under full control, their food supplies get taken care of?
seems to be a pattern, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It's in the history of man.
Didn't
It's
didn't
always been that
ancient
way.
Roma didn't the Roman Empire fall because there were too many people on welfare depending on the state to feed them, and they had a
Sure.
couple years of drought and crop failure?
Yeah, that's what happened. Well, they quit putting as far as the gold coin of the Roman Empire, they started putting tin in it. They started devaluing the gold. When that happened, the food started becoming very devalued as well, and a lot of it became free, and it was something that lost its value as far as quality of food. Towards the end, they would give out free bread, tell you to go to the Colosseum, don't worry about it. Go watch people kill each other. And, there's nothing to worry about. Watch your entertainment, eat as much as this free bread as you want. And as a society that does that, when the food becomes devalued, it devalues your society in the pillars of strength that your society is in. And that's what we're going through right now, because people look at our food industry and they say, oh, we got plenty of food. It's not food. It's industrial sludge, man. It's poison. And, it's built to make you addicted to it. It's a drug now. And nobody, we're going through a level of denial in this country about, the problem of the lack of nutrition that we're consuming every day. So how do you solve that? Well, you do something like the Beef Initiative, and you get people looking back at what pure animal protein is, how it came to be, how we got here with pure animal protein, and how we need to move forward with that mindset and with that intentionality of knowing that this is the only way we're going to save our communities, is to be powerful based on a very strong form of nutrition.
I saw something the other day. The American diet was designed to put you in an American hospital run by American healthcare so you can take drugs made by American pharma.
Well, all right. This is what it's called. It's called the medical pharmaceutical agricultural complex. Okay. You look at that chart, and in my Substack, I've got plenty of charts you can look at, and you can see the companies. And what it is okay, the medical, pharmaceutical, agricultural complex is owned by the same global corporations. Your food is allowed, you're allowed your food supply through a chemical company that is in charge of your seeds. It's in charge of your the seeds, your agriculture, everything that you do in not you, but a lot of people that bow down to the umbrella of, the impact is, it's controlled by chemicals and chemical contracts. Whenever that is the control apparatus of your food supply, your nutrition in your food is a second thought. I mean, we're talking major global profit margins and companies and conglomerates and control and power over that civilization. And, food, I've met a very intelligent man that was in the industrial food complex for many years. He was very successful in it, and he got out of it. But he basically, this man knows what he's talking about. And he said, our food supply is nothing more than a global marketing plan. That's all it is. Anything else, if they want to change the ingredients in your food, if you're eating frozen burritos, or if you're eating taquitos, if you're eating anything frozen, if they need to decrease the amount of protein, they can do that. They can say, hey, beef and bean burrito. All right. If they say beef and bean, it's 50-50. Well, in a couple of years, it could be basically 95% beans that are GMO beans and 5% beef. And you still would not know because they get to put fillers in there. And then those fillers taste like beef. They put thousands upon thousands of chemicals in our food industry that make us think that it's tasting a different way than it should. They do the same thing with dog food. So whenever you have a food industry that basically leads with a chemical that makes you manipulate your taste buds, you don't know what food is anymore.
There's a whole industry devoted to flavor science, to making chemical crap taste like something in the real
Well,
world.
I'll tell you what, there's a company called Roll DSM. Look them up. They basically control 90% of people's perception of what food tastes like. I think they generated over $9 billion in 2021 alone. And so whenever you have a chemical company that's a global chemical company that designs taste for, anything on the planet, and they're going full steam ahead now with fake meat and other fake, commodity products. You better learn where your food comes from, and you better quit paying attention to the marketing plan. And you better go out there and meet guys like you, Brian, that basically are growing and producing and putting some heritage, some education, some intentional agency into your lifestyle so you can provide food to your local communities. That is really, why would you not do this? What is the excuse that people use?
We've always done it this way. Why do we need to change? All that regenerative crap won't work. That's voodoo.
That's a short period of time of our food supply as we've known it as human beings. What we see is a really, less than 100 years. And really, you can look at 50 to even 40 years of how our food has changed dramatically. This is a small blip on a radar that is much fast, much bigger, has so much proof of work behind it. And it's going to have a hell of a lot of proof of work in front of it, because the regenerative is going to happen. And it's not going to change the population of the United States or even the world. What it's going to do is you're going to have a percentage of people that understand what food is, and they're going to be pretty powerful because they're going to be stronger. They're going to be healthier. They're going to use less health care costs. They're going to spend less on food in the long term. They're going to have good relationships with people like you and their local producers and suppliers and processors. And they're going to have confidence in their life, and their life is going to be more successful. They're going to make better decisions. They're going to have better relationships, and they're going to understand that they don't need to be looking at these marketing plans anymore because they're false and they are lies. And, they get away with it. That's fine. They can go do all that stuff. Like we said in the beginning, this is not about talking about all those companies. We're moving beyond that because we're going to provide new solutions.
So how do you feel about feedlots?
Man, feedlots have a place. It's really not the feedlot, basically. And this is where, I spoke with somebody the other day. The Sacred Cow, Diana Rogers.
Okay.
Okay, she wrote. Okay, I talked to her, and she's, it was a short conversation, and hopefully I get to talk to her more. But we have to look at this whole industry, and we can't look at it as black and white right now. We want to point our compass in the direction that goes into a regenerative way. Right now, we've got to reform the feedlots. A lot of feedlots are reforming. They are going non-GMO. They're looking for better solutions. They're giving better space to feeding those or finishing off those cows. So whenever you say feedlots and you say, feedlot finishing, grass fed, grass finished, grass fed, feed finished, grain finished, we need to look at where we stand as an individual, as a producer, and how are we moving in the direction where we can get out from underneath the umbrella of control that is going on right now. If we look at this too much as a very black and white issue, we're going to fail within the industry. We have to be okay with where we are and saying we're all going to work together. We're going to start communicating. I've got a rancher down in Central Texas. He's developed a damn good protocol that does grass fed, and then he finishes off on non-GMO grain. And he's getting that non-GMO grain, and he's getting it from very good sources that it is trusted and it is verified. And so there's a protocol there for, a customer base that wants grain finished because of the fat content. Everybody has their preference. Grass fed, grass finished is very lean, and it's a different type of meat. Some people not going to like that. So it's really the education of the individual saying, what am I going to accept? What is my knowledge based where I can understand that I'm not going to get these chemicals in my body? Once you, the individual, start with your education and your knowledge and you go talk to your rancher, you're going to be able to make your best decision based on your relationship with him and his protocol. Like going to you, and your protocol is going to be different than somebody down in the Texas panhandle, where we go through droughts, 10-year droughts sometimes. And you bet we're going to have to use some grain at times, but we're going to look at that grain and see what kind of grain it is.
Drought is real. It's
It
hit.
is.
It's settled in over the last couple months.
Yeah, it's here.
I can't ignore it any longer. I mean, not that I've been ignoring it, been watching the signs, and
Yeah.
winter moisture just hasn't come. So
Yeah,
last couple of
we're
weeks,
like spring. I mean, we've got a couple of snows here, but we haven't seen winter like we get, and so we're gonna go straight into a windy spring and wind in the Texas Panhandle. You want to talk about dehydrating the land, taking all humidity out of anything? It gets pretty parched here.
high fire danger too.
Oh yeah,
And
big time.
long-term drought means, the heavy fuels, the 100,000 hour fuels,
Hmm.
and all these invasive trees we've let grow up from basically where I am to where you are.
Right.
A lot of junipers planted as shelter belts, elm trees, I don't elm trees, hedge trees, everything.
Ever all of those that you say, you get all of that up here,
Yeah,
and like between you and I, yeah, that's how it's spread out.
and we've been seeing it since, well, the last 6 years. Um, you know, drought, you know, climate change is real, whether or not we can agree man is having an effect on that. The climate is changing. Um, Mega wildfires, not just here in the plains. Everybody's heard about the ones in California, the ones in Colorado, the ones in Montana. We've had some pretty good sized fires here too.
Mhm.
You guys had several down in the Texas Panhandle, kind of like, more eastern Panhandle, kind of close to Oklahoma, over around Canadian, that I
Mhm.
remember. And it's poor land use management practice. It's decades of poor land use management, period. Whether we're talking about here on the plains, or whether we're talking about the forests in California, or the wildland urban interfaces in Colorado. I mean, it's absolutely tragic that you had a neighborhood of over 150 houses burn up in an afternoon. Well, maybe we should look at where we're trying to build our houses, and maybe
Mhm.
we should manage some of those areas better. Maybe we need to start looking at where we're living on the plains and understand we're an environment that evolved with fire. Like, fire is a natural fact of life out here. And just like they're understanding out in California, with decades and decades and decades of, the Forest Service policy, every fire must be extinguished, no smoke by 7 a.m. the next day. That's kind of the standing order. We've had that mindset for a long time, and I think it's kind of come back to bite us in the butt, because we've got a lot of these dead heavy fuels that are just building up, building up, building up. And it doesn't take much to get them started. One of those dry, windy days like you can get in the panhandle. We get them up here, 40, 50 mile an hour wind, 75 degrees, beginning of March. That is a perfect
Yeah.
recipe for an absolutely horrific wildfire. And I can only imagine what some wildfires would have been like before we built all the roads and railroads and shot the buffalo. I mean, there would have had to have been some wildfires that make anything that we've seen on TV in the last 5 years look like a freaking Girl Scout campfire.
It'd be, yeah, it'd be kind of laughable. I mean, you've seen the pictures of the Dust Bowl, right? You know,
Yeah.
to where it's just a black cloud. That's what the fires were probably like as well. You know, it came in like that because you
I
traveled
can
with the
promise you
wind.
that's exactly what they look like. I've been
Yeah.
under
Right.
that smoke twice.
You know, we had one here in the Texas Panhandle. I think it's been about 10 years ago. You can look it up. I think on Texas Monthly did a pretty good piece on it. It wiped out a lot of land up here. It was pretty savage. A lot of people, some people lost their lives. A lot of cattle lost, everything.
So moving on
Sure.
to some other ones.
Mm-hmm.
I was my good friend Hobbs, who just moved to Texas from Oregon. He's down around Lufkin.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking a couple months ago, and he said money is the language of energy and carbon is the currency of the ecosystem. How does that grab you?
Carbon is, say again, carbon is what?
Carbon is the currency of the ecosystem and money is the language of energy.
Pretty much. I mean, we're on a dollar, right? And they're turning our whole economy into a carbon credit economy. So, you know, there's a lot to be said that, you know, money is energy and, you know, Bitcoin is energy. It's just transferred energy. You know, that's what money is. You don't get out of bed without basically exchanging money during the day. Everything that you're doing right now is so you use your energy, you dispel that energy into something that you feel is valuable. That basically that exchange rate is that dollar bill right now, and you give that to somebody else, they take that energy from you, then they go off and do something so they can do the same thing that you just did. That is a transfer of energy in a monetary value way. That is money as we know it. So you look at carbon, I mean, how they're going to leverage carbon and how the lie of carbon is going to be manipulated as far as a carbon credit economy, because they're going to make the cow basically a carbon hazard. That's what they're doing on a global front now. So they find out your MasterCard finds out that you're eating steak, you're going to lose your carbon credits. And if you're going to play the carbon credit game, you know, you're going to end up being basically in the long run a bad citizen. They already have this thing, and it's called a social credit score in China. And I've done a lot of damn research, and everything that's going on with this carbon credit economy is going in that direction. It's a form of identifying you as an individual and saying that you're bad for the economy, you're bad for the environment. And once you get that implemented into your type of profile, as we all have a profile within our banks and our government, then you will be looked at differently. And this is where all this is going with carbon. So yeah, carbon, he's right in a lot of ways.
Do you know there's some programs out there that are paying ranchers
Yep.
that regeneratively graze for carbon sequestration on their grasslands?
That's a big argument right now. Do we take advantage of it and really show them how to do it? Or is there a protocol built into that carbon sequestration that basically the government's going to be able to take control over your land in a long way and do some type of seizing that they've done in the past? This is going to be, we're going to find out. I don't know where this is going, and I don't know who's going to do it, but I've heard from both sides is yes, we're going to do this. And then no, hell no, we're not even getting close to it.
I've signed up with Grassroots Carbon, and
Have you?
yeah, suppose they should be coming to measure sometime soon. TM,
Right.
but I'm at the top of the list to come get measured and certified. So
Well, then that's going to be good to know, because I want to bring that in, you know, because as far as being within the beef initiative, you know, we can't be judgmental here. We got to bring your intelligence in. Let's have a conversation about it so we can get it out there. Say, hey, yeah, this is effective, or stay away from this. You don't want to go here. We have the rancher that's gone through this process. That center point of, communication is what we're hoping that the ranchers, with the relationships that we're trying to establish with the ranchers, that's what we can do. Let's have this discussion. Let's talk about it. That's the smartest thing to do.
Yeah, and I've heard the argument about, well, I don't need the government telling me how to farm.
Right.
Maybe somebody ought to come give you a little bit of advice every once in a while, because you're doing the same shit that you guys have been doing on the same dirt for 60 years. Maybe you could try something different. But the carbon program that I'm in, it's all third party.
Is it?
There's not a government certification or government program that's tied to it. It's all voluntary through third party, which is why I'm involved with them. If I thought there was a chance that the government was going to be able to come tell me how to do anything, I wouldn't do it. Like, I don't even go to the NRCS or FSA office very much anymore, just because I don't even want them to know what I'm doing.
Right. What about this? Do you know the company? You said it's Grassroots is who it is. Do we have a company global corporate profile on who's originating this funding for these things? I'd just like to know.
Well, Grassroots is kind of, God, I wish CK was here, because this is actually her job.
Right. No problem, man.
But,
it's complicated.
Grassroots is basically the broker. Okay.
Sure.
So they're functioning as the broker, and they're using another third party to do the measurement and the verification. So let's just say Joe's Oil Company comes up and says, I need 100,000 carbon credits. They go to Grassroots, say, Grassroots, I need 100,000 carbon credits. So Grassroots goes down through their file of ranches that they've measured and does the math, acres, tons per acre every year, and says, okay, here we go. And they put together a block of land that will be sequestering that carbon over the next several years.
Sure.
So, and they represent several, they're functioning as that for several carbon credit buyers.
Whenever like I said, this is going to be a conversation that's ongoing. Whenever they do that, what type of technology are they making you use? What type of metrics and measuring mechanisms and stuff like that are they using? Are they doing anything with your cows? Are they doing anything with, as far as tracking, digitizing things that haven't been digitized before?
Mostly, I think they're taking like your past management history into account to see what you've done on the land.
Right.
And then they come out, like, the measurement process is they come out and they measure several cores in each soil type, is what I've been told. And they take a 3-foot core.
Good.
Okay. So we're not just going to measure the surface carbon. We're not just going to measure down to a tillage line at the same time every year. They're going to measure 3 feet so they can measure how my deep rooted prairie plants are storing that carbon deep in the soil. And they're not going to measure the same time every year. They're going to wait 3 to 5 years and come back in a different season. Or maybe I had that wrong, but they're going to wait at least 3 to 5 years and then come back and measure it again. And the initial measurement gives them an estimate, and then they on what that land will store per year. And then over the term of the contract, they're watching how you're managing your land, and they come back towards the end and they measure it. And then that's when either the big payoff is, or they go, oh, well, we shouldn't have signed up this ranch.
Right. Well, because the reason I ask these questions, because there's a lot of things that are going on with this type of carbon movement. And I've got a pretty good team that kind of looks behind the curtain as much as you can to kind of see where the funding is coming from all of this, because there's so many damn, there's companies out there that act like they're the best thing since, a hormone-free cow, but that funding is coming from Bill Gates. So what is his motivation here, when he's trying to kill the meat industry? So we always just look, a little bit deeper than a lot of people are basically told probably in the beginning, as far as where everything's coming from. I like the idea if it is definitely something that's going to help the regenerative movement to get some leverage, and if I was going to get those carbon credits, I'd say it right now, I'll say it on camera. If I'm going to be part of that program, any benefit that I got from there that has monetary value, I'd be putting into the Bitcoin protocol. and say, you bet, I'll take this carbon credit. I'll take this whatever monetary value you're going to allow me to have, and I'm going to leverage it into this store value that is legal. And thank you. That would be the smartest thing in the world to do.
So how does a rancher start taking capital that they have, or capital or equity that they can access and borrow against, to start transferring some of their value store into Bitcoin?
Sure. It's hard to kind of get started in Bitcoin if you don't know, what's going on as far as the on ramps and the ways to basically acquire Bitcoin and to basically store it and have self custody to where you truly own that Bitcoin. You have seed phrases, you have hardware wallets, you have multi-sig companies that do a lot of stuff to help you make sure that Bitcoin is yours.
Okay, you got to explain it like I'm 5.
Sure. Well, what we're going to do for the people out there, as far as the ranchers that have no clue, I have a concierge service that we're already moving forward with it right now. We started it this week in Texas. We're going to go to the rancher and we're going to educate you like a major investment firm company would do. And we're going to teach you about Bitcoin. And we're going to say, this is the best protocol that we've developed for the rancher that wants to start using Bitcoin as a store of value. Somebody that wants to use it, accept it as a form of payment, we're going to be able to educate you on that. If you want to have a 5-year plan with Bitcoin, we're going to say, okay, this is what we're kind of recommending. And we're going to give you basically a roadmap that you can follow, and it'll be an ongoing education process. That's going to be big for the beef initiative. We're building teams across the regions that'll be able to educate the rancher instead of watching YouTube or anything like that. During my conferences, I'm having 4 conferences this year as well. I'm having one I'm having in Kerrville, Texas on April 23rd and 24th. We're going to have speakers. We're going to have education. We're going to have regenerative people there. We're going to have ranchers there. We're going to have Bitcoin investment people. We're going to have a lot of different types of speakers at these conferences that anybody can come to and kind of understand beef and Bitcoin. So by saying that, each conference that we have across the United States, the education is going to grow. And if you like today, tomorrow, if you want me to get somebody to start talking to you about Bitcoin and how you can start understanding it better, well, we're going to give you a really good kind of foundational understanding and how you can start leveraging it for yourself, because each rancher and farmer is going to be totally different. It has many different uses, and it's not a blanket approach. You have to really kind of understand it, and you need somebody there. And what's going to be cool about that is you, the rancher, gets to educate Beef Initiative as your protocol, what you're doing with your beef, your animal protein, and how you're doing it and looking at it. So it's a value for value. We're not charging anything for the Bitcoin education. And this is something that we want to be partners with all the ranchers so we can basically decrease that friction that is there, especially in the financial institution system that controls all of us. Let's kind of step up and give a white glove approach to the ranchers so they can better understand, and they don't have to worry about people scamming them because they have enough of that already. So, we're going to establish really good relationships with the rancher and just do what we can to help them better understand.
I could probably safely speak for most ranchers and say we're pretty much sick and tired of people taking money from us and giving us terrible advice.
Yeah. I mean, it's criminal. It is. And it sucks because you want to be a rancher. Damn it. That's what you're good at. You shouldn't have to have that paranoia and that corruption surrounding the industry. And a lot of that corruption is from the global or the corporate or the United States government, under the umbrella of the USDA, of the FDA. There's so many things that you guys have to be paranoid about that change like that, and that you have to be ready for the next year. Every 13 months, there's something new that's coming down the pipe that you got to think about as you're battling drought, as you're battling, lack of, grasslands, whatever it is, as far as sources for your land tools. There's so many things that you guys don't have time to come in here and say, okay, I understand Bitcoin, I'm a master. That's just not possible. You need help, just like we need help with our food. It's a win-win for both sides.
For sure. So what do you think about what's going on up in Canada with the trucker convoy?
I think it's wonderful, of course, just because people are exercising, being able to, stand on their own 2 feet and make their own damn decisions again, instead of being told what to do and told that you must comply to everything that the TV tells you to do. One thing that I think is very important that's going to come out of the truckers, and this is going to build, we don't know where it's going, but just them being able to seize $9 million and seize the bank account of the charity, the donations that were given to the truckers.
You're talking
You
about
know,
that GoFundMe thing where they
sure,
confiscated the money and said, well, we don't like their cause, so we're not going to give it to them. We're going to give it to people who we
yeah,
deem worthy.
yeah, and people think that's an isolated event. Guess what? I had a rancher here in Texas that his bank account got seized because they said you valued your cow wrong. He didn't have access to his capital. Guess what fixes that? Well, guess what fixes that up? Guess how many millions of dollars in Bitcoin that the truckers are now getting, and nobody can stop this now. You know why? Because it's peer to peer money exchange. And so those truckers are going to get that $9 million. They're probably going to get a hell of a lot more. And the whole world's going to start understanding Bitcoin a little bit better, because they're going to say, hey, the government can't seize this Bitcoin.
And in that respect, it's more like cash, that the government doesn't need to know what I spend cash on unless I tell them.
Nope.
But
And
if it goes through the bank now, if you put it on your debit card or you use PayPal, Venmo, or any of these other payment apps that go through the conventional banking system,
yeah,
the government knows that.
sure.
Like I don't. After all the revelations of Edward Snowden, if people don't think that the government can't look at every single detail of their lives at a whim, they're living in a fantasy world. Like,
Well,
the reality
especially
of it is,
now.
they're not watching all of us. Like,
No.
they can't watch all of us. They can only watch a very, very small percentage of us. But believe me, if they wanted to, they could find out every single detail about you. And it's scary.
Well, what's going on? Let's look at that. Why do they basically seize more and more control of the monetary system?
'Cause that's
Why
the
do
only
government?
move they have.
Well, the reason they do that is because it's so devalued. Once it's devalued, you have to control something more and more and more to make it look like it does have value. That's what's going on here. The United States dollar has lost tons of value. We can't even say how much value it's lost. You can't even quantify it right now. And they've proven that free money to anything you want to do, you get free money. Well, once you accept that free money, you're going into a database, you're going into a new surveillance system. And that's what's going on with the COVID. That's why, vaccinations, you're in a database now. If you ever got tested for COVID, you're in a database now. It's just how it is. That's just the truth. So, and they will use that in their ways that they do. And so, as far as, identifying each individual across, the world and the Western world, which is going on right now, they will be able to have access to those people that comply in certain ways. Well, you don't have to comply to everything. You don't have to break the rules to not comply. And so with using Bitcoin, Bitcoin is property. I'm transferring property to you and you're accepting it. And that's what we agreed to do. And if you never cashed out that Bitcoin, you would never have to pay taxes on it. Yeah,
As
I
long
don't
as
have
it
to.
stays a Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's unforeseen gains. You cannot tax for something that you've never spent money. You've never profited off of it. So what do you do with Bitcoin? You save it. That's what I do. I save Bitcoin. In the long run, I'm never touching my Bitcoin. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a bank that already exists in this world, very many of them, and I'd say, I got this much Bitcoin. Give me a $500,000 loan. If I have enough Bitcoin, they're going to say, sure, here it is. I never have to touch that Bitcoin. Guess what? That's what they used to do with land. It's no different. We live in a digital world, and for people to deny the fact that we live in a digital world, you're falling behind. Our cash is digital now. And so let's leverage the digital world in a way that's never been done, in a decentralized way that cannot be confiscated from you. It cannot be confiscated from these truckers. That will give them more power to stay and do what they're doing right now. If it was all cash, they would shut down every bank account they could of every one of those truckers. But now guess what? They have a new leverage tool that has a store of value that people are waking up to.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been seeing a lot of chatter on social media the last couple of days about a USA Freedom Convoy.
Uh-huh.
It looks like it's going to happen. Like,
Yeah.
3 or 4 weeks. It might take a while for everybody to get it, things organized and people to get supplies and routes planned out. But I think it's going to happen here. What do you think? How many trucks? What percentage of trucks do we need to stop moving to really collapse supply chains?
That's yeah, I think that's something that you have to look at the geography of the United States. Like where I am, you got north and south, interstate systems. Okay, so to keep products and goods and services into this part of the country is pretty easy because it's always a pass through north and south, east and west. And so by saying that, the Texas Panhandle will be pretty taken care of in a way because we have the localization, we have the processing plants. There's a lot of things that we can actually control pretty much locally. A lot of the country, you're gonna, a lot of different places will be suffered. I'd say about 40%. If they can get 40% of a disruption within our supply chain lines with the truckers, they would have a very big impact. And people would say, what's going on here? Oh, I haven't been paying attention. Maybe I should be looking to my local communities.
It's pretty strange, the lack of coverage that those protests up in Canada have gotten. It just blows my mind. Like, you won't find it on the news networks, but you've got to go to social media and you kind of have to look to
Yeah.
find it.
Well, I mean, if people don't realize that media is controlled by less than 10 corporations globally, and they think that CNN and Fox News are any different from each other, oh, come on over and I'll give you some education because, the media companies are pretty much at this point in time, if you're mainstream media and you're going through a centralized media control apparatus, which they all have to, you're going to not report on the news anymore. You're going to report on what they tell you to report. And there's very few people that actually do provide very good and actionable and truth-based news anymore. So I haven't had a TV on in over 2 to 3 years. I don't watch the news. I don't even, I'll pick and choose what I get to watch and what I want to see, because if something's going down, I'm going to know about it. And it's going to come from a lot smarter sources than watching that TV of propaganda. They call it programming for a reason.
It's programming your brain.
Of course it is. That's what we do. We allow ourselves to be programmed. I think if a lot of more people, if they became their own mind filters in our society, a lot of people would get a lot more happier, and they would look within a little bit more, and they look within their local communities instead of quit looking out with all this distractions that's going on in the world that's not benefiting their lives, but it's taking time away from them. Whenever you have to process all this bullshit that they're doing, you're not processing things in a positive way for your family or for your local community. You're worried about things that are not going on. Once you have secured your local community and you know who you're working with, then you can start looking out. And everybody says, let's look at food. They always say we got to feed the world. No, we don't. We got to learn how to feed local communities. That's how you feed the world. And that's it. It doesn't go any further than that. And if it
100%.
does, if you have that opinion that it doesn't start with your local communities, and this is how we solve starvation, and when this is how we replace shitty nutrition with very good nutrition, then you don't understand how things have survived throughout the time and history of man. It's not about a population control here. This is about local communities that work together. It is as simple as that. And no, like me and you talking right now, this is what this is about.
Local communities, community supported agriculture, shake the hand that feeds you.
Yes.
What are some of the other good ones I've heard? Know the face of your farmer is another great one that
Yeah.
my friend says all the time. You mentioned in a previous conversation we had, you wanted to put how many packing plants in the state of Texas?
Well, the big overall goal would be, to shoot big, right? We have 254 counties in the state of Texas. So, that's a lofty goal to say. What we really want to approach in the next decade here is to get one processing center basically in ever a 3 or 4 county range to where it starts out as a good regional co-op of processing animal proteins. What the processing division of the beef initiative is doing right now, we are going to be a consulting advisory board, whatever you want to call it. We're still looking at the language, but you're going to be able to come to the beef initiative and we're going to be able to consult with you. And the reason I'm able to say this is I have people in the processing industry in the state of Texas that have been doing it a very long time. We have a lot of information now that has USDA precedents, from processing centers all the way from, let's say, 2,000 a day all the way down to one a day. If you want an abattoir, if you want to be a butcher in your local community, you're going to be able to come to the beef initiative. And we're going to say, okay, these are the specs of the USDA and the state of Texas and the state of Texas rules. We will work with you and we'll get you started. We're going to have access to capital funding. We're going to have all kinds of different ways that you can get started. Communities can get started. Maybe it's church space, who knows, whatever can come up with the capital and create a processing facility in a region in which their county lies. That's going to be our goal. And I'm pretty excited about it because it kind of came to head pretty fast. And I have KNC Cattle Coal down in Austin. He broke ground on his processing center. He's going to shoot for about 200, 250 a day. Justin up here in the Texas Panhandle, he just opened up. He passed all his inspections. He now has USDA precedents. The head inspector of the state of Texas came to his inspection and gave a speech and said, this is what we want in the state of Texas. So there is a movement afoot and there's capital behind it. And now we have the intelligence of the processing industry in the state of Texas, which a lot of people will be able to use across the nation. We'll get you as far as we can until the state rules and regulations, but then we'll also be able to help you with that because of the connections that we have. And so we're going to be working with politicians. We're going to be working with people that have been in the industry for a very long time, and they know that we have to scale down. And we're going to end up knowing the rules and the laws sometimes better than the law and the rules know themselves, because it's a very detached organizational structure as far as regulations, this hand talking to this hand in the government. See, we have, when I say precedents, we have these things saying, oh, back in let's say 99, this was a ruling that happened in the state of Texas to where we have precedents here. This is how it's going to be done. And the state will go, okay, you're right. You are correct. So we'll be able to provide that type of intelligence that people can have confidence in, because a lot of these processing centers, let's give an example, Justin doing 30 cows a week. Okay, he has to meet regulations on a processing center that's 2,000 head a week, okay, or a day even.
It
So
doesn't make sense all the time.
well, their sanitation rules and regulations would actually not that make that processing center on 30 cows a week even, you can't compete, and so therefore you get costed out of being able to open up your own processing center. Well, we've got, once again, we got precedents to where we can scale your center into your facility into the size that you want to shoot for, be it a butcher, local butcher, or it be somebody like Justin doing 30 a week. So, and that's never, I don't think that's ever been done. And it's going to be a fun year putting all this together, but we're going to start, helping people out as soon as possible.
So any plans to expand in other states? I mean, you said you'd help folks in other states.
Mhm.
And a theme that keeps coming up and a question a lot of people usually have is, well, how scalable is it? Well, that's not always a question of scalability. It's a question of replicatability, because we don't want
Mhm.
one big thing. We want a bunch of little
Oh,
things that are benefiting communities. So how
sure.
well does Beef Initiative replicate to other areas?
Well, I think that's the strong point of the beef initiative. I first started out as the Texas beef initiative, and it's because it's Texas, right? But it's so beyond just Texas. In Bitcoin, you have what we call decentralized nodes, basically, that run on a lightning network. And what that is we can look at it at the communities across the United States as far as the beef initiative. There's going to be a New Mexico beef initiative. There's going to be a California beef initiative. There's going to be a Kansas beef initiative, Oklahoma beef initiative, Florida beef initiative. We already got guys putting together a Missouri beef initiative. And so what we'll do is we'll help out everybody we can in each state to get going like what we've done in Texas. There's no reason we shouldn't be doing this. And so once we get that, we can start these conferences. Everybody can come together. We can share this information. And it's a decentralized way of sharing information that becomes very powerful very fast. And especially if we're approaching the processing, the producing, the supply, and the market access. This is something people don't talk about. We got to create the market access too. How do we create market access? We create all these small communities together, knowing each other, saying, this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it. And if we need to ship across state lines, well, we can do it in Texas. Maybe you can't do it in Kansas. Well, we'll help you out. So we're going to begin those conversations. And what that does is that identifies the restrictions, the leverage that we can use, and the conversations that we need to have. So this is a national thing. The beef initiative is going to be, we're going to change the beef industry, and we're going to ask for everybody's help. And I've been doing this by myself. I've funded this. I'm not out here getting corporate money at this point in time. We will get funding, we will do this, but right now this is about saving children's lives. This is about bringing communities together, hyper localization of our food systems.
Saving children's lives, which ties into food as medicine, which ties into food intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we should say the loss of food intelligence, because it seems like since we've had the USDA come out with dietary guidelines, that our health as a society has done nothing but decline.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that they've built upon the great lie that fat is bad and sugar is okay. I think they've built on that lie so much that they can't go backwards. Like, they can't go back and say, well, maybe the stuff that we've been teaching you for 70 years is wrong. Sugar's what's really killing us and giving us cancer. And to that extent, refined grains that the body turns immediately into sugar aren't that great for us either. Maybe we should go back to eating like our ancestors ate and eat a lot of meat and some vegetables.
Well, that's what they should do. They're not going to, because they're too far, like you said, they're too far gone with this. The only way this is going to change is by the individual making those consumption choices. They're going to have to look in the mirror and say, why do I desire what I desire when it comes to food? What is my level of education, intelligence level of food, and what it is? And you're right. It's a lack of food intelligence. It's what's got us here. It's been so manipulated to where, taste buds are the deciding factor of how a child learns what food is. That's dangerous. And that's completely exploited. 46% of our children right now in the United States between the ages of 5 and 11 are obese or overweight, and they're on the way to diabetes. 5 and 11-year-olds. That is criminal. And people need to quit acting like it's not happening. And they need to quit denying the cause and the effect of this. And it is from highly processed foods. It is from highly refined sugars. It is to chemical companies designing our food systems. And if they can change if they want, but you know what? I'm not going to pay attention to them anymore. I'm not going to validate their existence if I don't have to. And that means I'm not going to buy their product, because I have very good relationships with local animal producers and produce producers. So all this comes together. It becomes very symbiotic. I don't care what the food industrial complex is doing anymore, because I'm pretty secure. And everybody that's listening to this, and everybody across the United States, if they make that same decision, they won't have to worry about this food supply shortages. They won't have to worry about their kids being overweight or obese, and they won't have to be worrying about having a heart attack when they're 58 years old, because they're not going to believe the lies that animal fat is bad for you, that eating and consuming canola, rapeseed, in every food product that you eat is actually good for you. It's not good for you. It's poisonous. And that's, people need to realize that.
Well, how are seed oils poisonous?
Well, the level of engineering it took to get seed oils into something that is basically consumable was fascinating. 1956 FDA outlawed rapeseed for any form of human consumption. Okay, let's go back from there, because
rapeseed is canola for
right,
those
yeah,
that don't
there
always
you
follow.
go. FDA, you look it up, Google it right now. 1956 FDA rapeseed. and you'll get the report. So you look at that. Let's go back a little bit further. Okay. Procter and Gamble. Okay. Procter and Gamble was a candle and soap chemical company founded in 1837. Okay, come turn of the century, they basically sold a lot of damn candles because we didn't have electricity. When the
Right.
United States of America basically started using electricity, Procter and Gamble had to find a way to use all that cottonseed that they were using to make the candles and soap. They turned that into Crisco. So you started consuming your candles. It's the same stuff that was in those candles became what you were frying your chicken, whatever it is, it is. That's how the seed oil started with the consumption side of it in the United States on a big scale.
That
And
explains why Crisco burns really well and
yeah,
makes a lot
it's
of light.
amazing. Yeah, exactly.
Burns
And
nice and slow, makes a lot of light.
but
Not much smoke.
if you look at that, just starting there at Procter and Gamble and how they got into Crisco and how it all started, and to where we are now, with canola, rapeseed. I mean, that thing is a weed, man. It's poisonous. It's they found science. They were able to engineer a way to take out the acid and to take out the poisonous sides of it. But for your body to have to digest that type of chemical that will run your car in the engine and just as good as motor oil, and you're okay with eating like tons of that throughout your lifetime, you need to see what food is. I'm sorry, it's not. It's, lard, we use lard, tallow, that's what we came here with. And there's, that's what happened with Ansel Keys. He came out with a very good marketing plan and all these studies saying that cholesterol was going to give you a heart attack. And that kind of narrative started after Dwight D. Eisenhower had a heart attack in 1954. And they said, well, why did our president have a heart attack? And so they focused on cholesterol. They didn't bring to the fact that Dwight D. Eisenhower smoked 4 packs of cigarettes every day too. It's funny how all these truths just never get told,
Yeah.
and how it evolves out.
Yeah. We're on a roll.
Sure.
But I got to go recycle some coffee. Can we take a quick break?
Yes, not a problem.
All right. I'll be right back. Oh, we're back. I had to recycle a little bit of coffee. So what I was just thinking about is a couple weeks ago, I was talking to my friend Gail Fuller, and
Mm-hmm.
he was talking about glyphosate, and we're talking about food intelligence. We're talking about, being more aware of what you put in your body. I'm of the opinion, and like I said, my opinion, that we're spraying these crops with these antibiotics, with these herbicides, or these pesticides that basically just kill everything else that we don't want to live. And we're feeding these grains, and I'll just say, for example, corn and soybeans are the two biggest offenders. We're feeding this corn and soybeans that's been grown with all of these herbicides and pesticides and antibiotics. We're feeding these to our food supply. Okay. And the cows eat them. I can't help but wonder if there's some biological effect that quote science has totally missed that happens to the biology of these cows when they're eating so much of this engineered grain. And there's also compounding factors in there a lot of times, right? Like
Sure.
a lot of feedlot cattle are implanted to maximize gains. Okay, we can make an, and they always want to make the argument that it's a financial decision. Well, if we don't do it, we're going to lose money because everybody else does. That's not how I want to do business. But they're also feeding. A lot of times they give antibiotics as prophylactic,
Mm-hmm.
and I can see where that makes a lot of sense, and I can also understand why they don't want to tell anybody. But the point I'm making is, when you confine these animals in these feedlots, there's a lot of antibiotics being used. There's a lot of questionable feed being used that you don't always know where it came from. You don't always know what it was sprayed with. My cattle, if you want to know what they've eaten, I'll tell you. I'll show you.
Right.
So, do you think that maybe there's some of these chemicals that are in our food supply that are building up in our bodies and causing some long-term health effects?
Yeah, I mean, I think that without question, that's what's going on right now. Glyphosate, it's Roundup, right? So, what do you do with how many years was Roundup, brought to the forefront that it was causing cancers? Okay, they settled for billions of dollars and all that recently. That's what happens whenever these chemicals get into our bodies and they have a class action lawsuit. So, nothing really ever changes on this. If it's not glyphosate, it's going to be some other. There's thousands upon thousands of chemicals that are getting into our systems because they're following that grain process and procedure as far as the very beginning of that seed. The beginning of that seed has been manipulated from the very beginning in the labs. They've manipulated it to only grow if it's used in this certain way, and that's what the farmer and the rancher have to sign, is that technology use agreement, basically saying, I will grow this grain, I will use these pesticides, I will use these herbicides in the way that you tell me, so I can have a cash crop and I can have better yields. And then, those yields go get transferred into that cattle that is eating that grain that was raised by the herbicides and the pesticides and genetically modifying its organisms. You damn right, all these chemicals are getting into our systems and they're getting into our children. There's so many things that you can do as far as scientific reports. You can find it. You just do research on Roundup and health, you know, um, health issues caused by Roundup. Well, let's talk about all that herbicides and pesticides getting into our water systems. Even if you don't ever eat that cow or you don't ever eat that grain, you're still getting that poison into the water systems in your local communities that are doing these monocrops, growing all of these fields. There's no way around it. These chemicals are getting into our tissues and they're getting into our kids. And we're seeing things. I have a doctor that I talk to, and I've said this in a lot on the different podcasts I do. She looks after teenage boys in the state of Texas. She says that there is an epidemic of teenage boys' testosterone levels, and they're showing up as 200 teenage boys with 200 T cell counts.
What
That
should
should
it
be
be?
way over 1,000. Our
Huh.
boys are becoming asexual because they don't have any testosterone. Well, let's flip it over to the women, to the females. Well, they're becoming basically to where they can't have children at a younger ages. And there's been studies that it's the glyphosate, that it is the chemicals that are causing the infertility. So all the information is out there, but people refuse to go see it. For one, maybe they don't know how to obtain that information because everybody thinks that Google is the internet. So there's a
Because the
lot
man
of
on the box on the TV can't make it a 20-second soundbite.
pretty much. I mean, that's a high time preference way of living and in sourcing your information to where it's instant gratification. It's the quick fix. It's the dopamine. And here we go. And here we go. And then it's on to the next one. All the information's out there. It's not a big secret. It's just that nobody pays attention to it because, the food tastes good. And that's all that matters because it's been engineered to make you addicted to it. So you're not going to question it because you're hungry every 4 hours because you're eating a type of food that makes you hungry every 4 hours and makes your pancreas and your insulin levels go through the roof. Diabetes is a maintenance illness to where how much it costs average across the United States for somebody for diabetes per month.
Are we talking type 1 or type 2?
Type 2. Let's go type 2, right?
Okay, because type 1, I mean, they're kind of born
it's manageable.
and
Well, yeah,
and that's not brought on by
yeah.
poor diet.
Right. And it's manageable and all kinds of stuff. Type 2 diabetes is caused by our food. It's just that simple. So $900 a month, flat rate, just for insulin for every American in the United States to battle with diabetes. You can't get over most type 2s. You're not going to go over it. One thing you can do is how many hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people have changed their lives by eating pure animal protein that were once borderline diabetic or were diabetic. And that's just facts, but you're not going to see that. You're not going to get these reports because diabetes is making the pharmaceutical companies way too much money. And it's why would they change that? Why
And
would the
media
medical
companies
field?
are sponsored by the pharmaceutical companies,
There you go.
and they all own the congressman.
There you go. Impact, medical, pharmaceutical, agricultural complex. They're all talking to each other. okay, I got this food product over here. Okay, we're going to release this food product. Well, what chemicals can we put in that food product? Because the FDA just said we can put 1,000 new chemicals into the food system this year. Nobody knows that. It's called the GRASS rule, generally recognized as safe. So 1,000 new chemicals are going into our food system this year. So we got the food supply that's affected. We got the chemical companies that are making money. Now pharmaceuticals. Well, we got this type of pharmaceutical, this prescription now that we can actually battle that what's going to be caused by these chemicals. Do you think that they're not talking to each other lockstep and barrel on all of this? If you don't think that that is happening, you really don't understand the system and what you're living in.
I would agree with that. I
It's
do.
true. Even doctors don't understand it.
It's the same in, well, it's the same in everything. The institutions have been captured by corporate interest,
Sure.
and the politicians have been captured by corporate interest. And like the longer these congressmen and senators stay in there, that insider trading, there was some I get, what was it, Nancy Pelosi about a month ago was kind of
Yeah.
in the news for insider trading, and she was trying to defend it. Well, if
She's
you or
been
I did that, we'd be in jail.
she's been doing it her whole career. It's nothing new. I mean, she's rich, man. She manipulates every quarter.
It
So
it You got to wonder how many senators and politicians have gotten extremely wealthy in the last 2 years off their investments in Moderna, Pfizer, and J&J.
well, you're starting to see some people. So I mean, it's not hard to see. It's public information. It's just people don't go look at it, and people don't have the attention span to, they just they don't put a lot of low time preference into that education of saying this is very broken, and this is how it is affecting you, and it is affecting our lives, and that's why we have to start with food. That's why we have to look at food first above anything, because if you start with the source of the seed of the corruption of the seed, then it goes to money, it goes to politics, it goes to chemical companies, it goes to global corporations. One thing it does not go to, it doesn't go to those cattle behind you in your picture there. You control that access to that energy and to that value, because you're not using the chemical companies, you're not using the medical corporations, you're not using the pharmaceutical, you're not really using the agriculture in a way that a lot of people are. So you don't have to really worry about that. You're doing it right. And a lot more people want to learn how to do it the way you're doing it. That's not going to be able to be stopped. One thing that, is a bottleneck is getting that land, getting access to. If you can't have the land, though, why don't you have a relationship with Brian? Why don't we go out here and have a relationship with him? In that way, we can at least be as close as we can, and we can get educated. Like I said in the beginning, why would a person not do that? It's rewarding. It's a value add to your life.
They wouldn't do it because they don't know it's available.
Right. And that's, here we are. Here's the beef initiative. Let's all do this together. Let's make this crowdsourcing. Let's make this a collective. This is how things get changed. They don't get changed on the political level. Politics follow what the community says they should do. If they don't listen in the beginning, they listen whenever there becomes a collective that becomes a majority saying, you're not getting in the office again. Okay. If you don't start listening to your constituents. So, I'll work with any politician across the United States right now. If you want to have a talk with the Beef Initiative, because I'm going to come and talk to my local representatives. I'm going to leverage the United States government and the state government in every direction that I can. And I'm going to have a team that's going to look at every part of every legislation that's been passed. We're going to join forces with the Farm and Ranch Freedom Alliance. It's a very powerful organization here in the state of Texas. They're down in Austin. We don't have to put up with this manipulation anymore. And that's what I want to bring as far as that confidence to people. It's hard for the rancher that's out there 20 hours a day trying to, survive and trying to raise the meat, the protein. You need people like me doing the Beef Initiative, and people that want to be part of the Beef Initiative to help you. And that's what I want all the ranchers across the United States to know, is we're here to help. We're here to form a new form of communication that we've never had before. Our grandparents knew how to decentralize their communication. They had the two-party or the party line system. They knew who they were going to exchange, half their cow with that year or half that hog with. They knew part of their produce was going to these families in this market in the town square. So this is what we're doing, and we're bringing it back, but we're using the digital world to do it. And it's very possible, and it can be very powerful, and it's going to be very powerful.
Okay. So how exactly does Bitcoin tie into Beef Initiative in your whole vision? Like bring it all back to the 30,000 foot view.
I just tell everybody you're going to have a new store of value that your grandparents or you never thought you were going to have, and you're going to be able to leverage that store of value. If they're building fake land in the metaverse, well, we're going to have a store of value that basically nobody can touch. And you don't even have to tell anybody about it either, because if you never cash out Bitcoin, you don't have to claim it. You don't have to just say anything. It's an investment just like anything else. It's a piece of property. That's what it is. And once the rancher understands, I said this on Marty Bent last week. I said, you got a rancher that's been doing this for 40 years. And he understands everything that's thrown at him as far as manipulations from futures to commodities to grain prices, like we've talked about before. Everything that a rancher has to do, it has to navigate through every year. Once we get him educated and understanding what truly the store of value and the leverage of Bitcoin, you think a light is not going to go off in that rancher's head that he's going to say, holy shit, I didn't think about this. And he's going to have a team there saying, let's help you. Let's save your legacy. Let's build your legacy. Let's do this together. And that's what's going to happen. The thing about Bitcoiners, we're not asking for money. That's the thing about people don't understand. We don't have to, because we leverage Bitcoin. We're trying to help and save a food industry here. And so it's not about LARPing. It's not about having a marketing plan so I can go out and get rich real quick. Has nothing to do with it. It's about saving our ranchers and saving our farmers. And we're asking them to trust us right now and to try it out. Let's have a conversation. Bring us your questions and we'll help answer those questions. And in the meantime, you're going to educate us on your protocol on how you're raising and how you're saving the land, how you're raising your produce, how you're supplying it, how you're processing it. And guess what? That creates a general sense of awareness across this country, because we're doing it locally, local communities, and that spreads like a virus.
Hopefully not a virus, more like well, I was about ready to say wildfire, but that's not that great either.
Right. Yeah. I guess I shouldn't say virus, but anything that was a big scam anyways. So, but as far as it spreading, what it is, it's a form of communication that we need to leverage. And what it is a decentralized form of communication that is not going through a centralized control apparatus. Right now, we're using this type of system. But guess what? I mean, there's going to be things that happen on the Bitcoin protocol, the Bitcoin network, that basically, you want to talk about decentralized communication. It's coming. Podcasts are going to be done differently. And there's going to be a different way of monetizing podcasts. It's already happening. There's a lot of movement happening right now. Podcast 2.0. There's Bitcoin TV. These things are on a different type of protocol that people don't understand, but you're going to see a lot more of it coming your way. Once the ranchers understand this form of communication that has monetary value and is a store of value, they're going to think a little bit in a different direction. They're going to point their compass in a different direction, just a little bit. That's all we're asking.
Yeah. Okay. So I was sitting here thinking about, you keep mentioning Bitcoin is decentralized, and that it is a blockchain-based decentralized ledger.
Right.
And the way I understand that works is every individual computer that's running the hash software
Sure.
has its own copy of the complete blockchain.
Sure.
And it's creating these hashes to try to predict the next block or to verify the next block in the chain. And it's decentralized, which means there's unlimited copies of it. But then there's also computers who spend a lot of time comparing the chains to each other and agreeing which chain is the valid chain. So, and every transaction is recorded in chronological order. Do I have that? Do I have that correct?
Pretty much. Yeah, that's a good view of it. Sure.
So as these different blockchains they all start in the same place and they have transactions added on to them. And then the blockchains kind of merge and they figure out how everything fits together. And then that copy of the blockchain propagates back out. Is that
Pretty much. I mean, it's just a verification process. It's a ledger. It's nothing more than a ledger that you basically can stamp your ownership on
and if you wanted
and
it,
you
and
protect it.
it can be spoofed, but to spoof it, you have to have so many computers making a different
Good luck.
blockchain with false information that it's
Good
just,
luck.
it's not practical.
I love
Mathematically
it.
possible, but not practically
I
possible.
love everybody that goes through. Yeah, nation state's going to attack. Yeah, okay. Well, we had a nation state attack against Bitcoin this year. It was called China. You know, they did something. They decreased the hash rate by 50%. Guess what? Most people never even knew that happened. So you're going to have to shut down a lot of damn hash rates. You're going to have to shut down a lot of different countries, you know, providing that value of verification. And we can sit here for the next 10 years and say, well, I just don't understand it because how can that happen? Well, why is that a store of value? Well, you know what? Who was the first person that started printing money? You know, who is that person? Who was the first person to ever, you know, establish a gold coin? You know, let's look at it in perspective here. There's a lot of millions and actually $1 trillion getting close to, of course, is where Bitcoin always hangs out. You get a market cap that goes from 1 trillion to 10 trillion. There's your verification. Okay. And it's going that direction. Whenever you have a value of a society that does not have a store of value in its money system anymore, people with a lot of money are going to say, where can I put this value? A lot of people doing it in land right now, right? They're buying up a bunch of land. A lot of people are doing it with real estate. Well, what happens after real estate and land? Where are you going to put it? Gold's not moving. Gold's going backwards. Where are you going to put it in bond market? Okay.
Gold's only going backwards in relation to the dollar. The dollar's losing value. It's not gold that's losing value. It's the dollar.
Yeah, but can you carry $1 million worth of gold
I'd rather look at $1 million worth of gold than $1 million of cash.
Okay. Well, let's say this.
But you can't carry it around your pocket. You can't put that in a briefcase and carry it around.
You can't even exchange gold, can you? Most people that own gold don't even own gold. They own a gold note.
Right.
Just like the dollar is a note. It's not gold. And so once you can prove that you own part of that network that only has 21 million Bitcoin ever, and you can prove that you are the custodian, that you have ownership of that part of the Bitcoin protocol, that is your value. Because there are going to be a lot of people say, you damn right it's value. Let me have that Bitcoin. I'll buy it from you right now, because you know what? Because the number's going to go up. We're at 40 something thousand. We've been to 69. Well, let's just keep on watching it and we'll see what happens. And it's never too late to get into Bitcoin. You don't have to own one Bitcoin. If you've got $100, that $100 is going to be worth more than $100 next year. I guarantee you that $100 is not going to have any value if it's $100 in cash. And I guarantee if you got $100 worth of gold, that $100 worth of gold is going to be doing about the same thing for you.
So if there's only 21 million Bitcoins that will ever be in existence,
yeah,
how many have been found?
They say there's about 18, 19 have been mined. Really doesn't matter. Once it's all been mined, what's out there is out there. And the hash rates will, you know, it'll basically prove and verify what's existed, what's been kind of sleeping dormant, might be gone forever. Who knows? That's part of scarcity. That's why they call it scarcity. You know, whenever you can look at something is scarce, we don't know. Let's find out.
It's basic supply and demand economics at that point.
Pretty much, isn't it? So once people start understanding what scarcity is, because we have scarcity of water right now, right? There's things that we know that are scarce. How do we treat that? How do you treat that as a rancher when water is scarce? It's very valuable, isn't it? Okay, why wouldn't you treat Bitcoin, the new monetary system that has a store of value that can't be confiscated from you? Why would you treat Bitcoin any different whenever you can transact it peer to peer and it's completely legal and you don't ever have to pay taxes on it if you don't cash it out?
It's an excellent point. I mean, I'm all about not having to I'm all about avoiding giving the government any more money than I have to.
Right. And Bitcoin's going to survive. All these other cryptocurrencies, all these Ethereums, they're going to get taxed and regulated in ways you don't know. And the government will get those because they're centralized protocols. They're not decentralized. You can't do that to Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't have a CEO, and it doesn't have a company. It doesn't have a headquarters. What it has a community of humans that said this is going to have a store of value. Once you have that on a global scale, and we have less than 1% adoption, what happens whenever Bitcoin gets adopted 10% across the world out of 8 billion people? You want to talk about something that is a store of value that people agree on? Well, guess what? People start paying attention. They start putting a lot of intentional action into that protocol to protect it. Because you know what? It's protecting those cows. It's protecting that land. It's protecting your child's future. It's protecting your food supply. It's protecting your time and space in ways that has never been done before. It's somewhat complex, but if you can just go down the rabbit hole of education and have an open mind and turn off the FUD. Whenever I was in the .com startups, and you had Google and you had Amazon that came out. Do you know the amount of fear, uncertainty, and doubt that they did on those companies? Google saying it had no value, or let's say Amazon. Amazon almost didn't happen. Who the hell is going to read a book online?
Yeah.
You heard all of this. Well, I'm not doing that because I'm not going to spend money online. Gosh, I'm going to have to use my credit card. Somebody's going to steal my information. You had all this fear and uncertainty and doubt. Well, all of those media companies and all these corporations that were causing this fear and uncertainty and doubt, they were acquiring Amazon,
And
parts of Amazon.
they were
And
quietly
now,
figuring out how to get their finger in the pie before anybody else did.
and this is called Wall Street. And I've seen it, I've lived it, I've been right in the belly of the beast of it. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt is what they do to things that are going to win. If it's not going to win, they're not going to talk any crap about it because they don't care. What they do is they manipulate your mindset on what has value, what does not have value. Bitcoin is the most valuable thing on this planet right now to leverage. And once you learn how to leverage it in a new way that's never been done before, it'll become the new, it'll be an awareness that's going to help save a lot of people.
Okay. Hypothetically, you've sold me that Bitcoin is a good store of value.
Okay.
How do I get started?
I'm gonna have somebody call you, and they're gonna start doing the white glove concierge service for you. And you're going to talk to this man, and he's going to be very, very patient with you, and he's going to start exactly where you need to start. And let's come back in 1 month, and then we'll have a conversation. I'll make that deal with you. I'll make you that guarantee. And so you got 1 month, and then let's come back from 1 month and see what you think about Bitcoin.
Okay. Well, let's set that up. Let's go ahead and get that set up as soon as we get done here.
Sure.
So, before we get out of here, I'm sure you're ready to go finish the rest of your day.
Yeah.
Where can we find you to learn more?
Well, to learn more, let's go. We got a Substack. We got everything. Go to thebeefinitiative.com. We got a newsletter in there. I also have a Substack. It's the Harvest of Deception is how it started. It's initiative.substack.com. We have a Telegram group you can come into and ask questions. It's at Beef Initiative. And then my handle is at Modern T Man on Twitter. And then the Beef Initiative has its Twitter handle is at Beef Initiative as well.
Okay. I'll make sure I get all those links in the show notes.
Man, I really appreciate it, Brian. Yeah, let's do this 1 month. Today is February 13th. We're coming back mid-March, and we're going to do this again on a Sunday, whatever that Sunday is. Let's do this. And I want to see your knowledge because I want to take ownership, and we're going to do value for value exchange here.
Okay. I'm in.
That's fair, right?
I'm in with an open mind. I want to learn.
Awesome.
All right. Well, it's been great, Slim. I appreciate you joining me today.
Sure.
And, I guess if there's nothing else, y'all have a great week.
Hey, appreciate you, Brian. Thanks for having me on. We're going to be talking again real soon.